This is Charles. We can hear you.
Okay. Uh, a very good evening, good afternoon, and good morning to each and every one of you. I take pleasure in inviting you all to this webinar on preserving marine biodiversity for a sustainable future and journeying with the coastal communities. Uh, Thank you for taking out time to be with us to observe this Laudato Si week and to participate in this Laudato Si event organized by the Jesuit Conference of South Asia, Jesuit Conference of India, and the Social Justice and Ecology Secretariat of South Asia. Without taking much time, I would like to go into the program. We'll start with an opening prayer. I have taken a prayer from the Laudato Si Encyclical written by Pope Francis. I would request you all to remain silent for a minute as I read out this prayer. All-powerful God, you are present in the whole universe and in the smallest of your creatures. You embrace with your tenderness all that exists. Pour out upon us the power of your love that we may protect life and beauty. Fill us with peace that we may live as brothers and sisters, harming no one. O God of the poor, help us to rescue the abundant and forgotten of this earth, so precious in your eyes. Bring healing to our lives, that we may protect the world and not prey on it, that we may sow beauty, not pollution and destruction. Touch the hearts of those who look only for gain at the expense of the poor and the earth. Teach us to discover the worth of each thing, to be filled with awe and contemplation, to recognize that we are profoundly united with every creature as we journey towards your infinite light. We thank you for being with us each day. Encourage us, we pray, in our struggle for justice, love, and peace. Amen. Thank you. I would like to take this time to welcome each and every one of you to this webinar on preserving biodiversity and journeying with the coastal communities. On behalf of the Jesuit Conference of South Asia, Jesuit Conference of India, Social Justice and Ecological Secretary of South Asia Conference Development Team, I would like to extend a very warm welcome to each and every one of you to this webinar. I would like to extend a special word of welcome to Ms. Amy Woolen, who is representing us, who's representing the Vatican here. She's working as a co-coordinator of Ecology Task Force of COVID-19 Commission Vatican, and she's also the representing the Colombians. I would like to extend a very special word of welcome to all the resource persons, to Dr. Roxy Matthew Cole, to Cheryl Dugan and Dr. Victor Roach for accepting our invitation and to be with us and to speak on the topics that is chosen for today. I would like to extend a very special welcome to each and every one of our partners from the provinces, from the conference from South Asia representing various countries. I would also like to extend a warm welcome to our Eco-Jesuit team from Philippines, Cheryl, for joining us, and to all the participants who have come from different parts of the country, from different parts of the world to this event. I'm sure this event will be a unique one for us to reflect on this particular theme in the current context, which is very much changing on a day-to-day basis. We have concern towards the environment, but ocean is something that we have not much reflected on. So that is why we have chosen this theme for today's webinar. I would like to. We have with us a very eminent resource person today to speak on the topics that we have chosen for today. Dr. Roxy Matthew Cole from the Indian Institute of Tropical Meteorology will speak on the impacts of climate change on Indian Ocean and future predictions. I would like to invite Ms. Suman to introduce Dr. Roxy to the participants and hand over the session to him. Over to Suman.
Yeah, thank you so much, Charles, sir. Dr. Roxy Matthew Call is a climate scientist at the Indian Institute of Tropical Meteorology. He did his PhD in ocean and atmospheric dynamics from Hokkaido University, Japan. Roxy is currently leading research on climate change in the Indo-Pacific region and its impacts on global rainfall patterns, the monsoons, the cyclones, and the marine ecosystem. He is the chair of the Climate and Ocean Variability, Predictability, and Change, a project of World Climate Research Program, Indian Ocean Region Panel, and lead author of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change Reports. He actively collaborates with citizen science networks, local governments, and media to bring science to society. Roxy is among the list of top 2% scientists ranked by Stanford University. He was awarded the Kavli Fellowship in 2015 and the National Research Council's Senior Research Associateships in 2018 by the US National Academy of Science. The Indian Meteorology Society felicitated him with the Young Scientist Award in 2016 for his research on the changes in the monsoon. So over to you, Dr. Roxy.
Thank you, Suman and Charles, and the Jesuit community Eco-Jesuit community for organizing this wonderful session. I always received a lot of warmth from the Jesuit community. And when Charles mentioned me that the community is working on Indian Ocean, climate change, environment in the Indian Ocean and all, I was very pleasantly surprised, and I was happy to hear that, because I haven't seen much organizations working on the ocean side, particularly faith-based organizations. So it's a pleasant moment for me to be in conversation with all of you, and hopefully take it forward further in terms of actions together as well. So let me share, I brought some slides with me to share how climate change is at an accelerated pace over this Indian Ocean region, this densely populated region. Yeah. And I work, like Suman and Charles said, I work in the Indian Institute of Tropical Meteorology. It's in Pune. Pune is like about 2 hours from Mumbai, from the west coast of India. So this is my starting slide. It's a rodent. It's not a rat. It's called a bramble K. melami, or it was called a bramble K. melami. This is the first mammalian species to be extinct due to man-made or human-made climate change. Oh, just a moment. And this mammalian species was endemic to an island in the fringes of Indian Ocean between Australia and Papua New Guinea. What happened was that this species, the bramble K. melami, the melamis they look like rodents, and they were endemic to this very small island. But due to rapid sea level rise, along with storms that inundated this entire island and wiped out this species, a few years back, I think the last species was reported maybe almost a decade ago. And one of the major reasons is climate change, which is accelerating the sea level rise. Particularly over this region, the East Indian Ocean, Southeast Indian Ocean region, the sea level rise is at a fast rate. If the global rate of sea level rise is about 3 millimeter per year, over this region, the sea level rise is at about 7 millimeter per year, which is like double the global average. So I just wanted to start with this species. And the recent climate change report cautions that the rate of future sea level rise is much larger than what we have seen in the past. And sea level rise is just one of the changes that we have seen in the Indian Ocean. In fact, the ocean is at our doorstep. Charles was saying we have worked on the environment a lot, but seldom looked into the ocean. But so the ocean has come to us now in ways, multiple ways, which we will see in the coming slides. So why the Indian Ocean? Why it's particular other than the changes? Now this is a particular map. It doesn't conform to our usual notions. This is a map blown to proportions based on the population. So where do we have the largest population? In the Indian Ocean rim countries over this region, right? The largest population. In fact, I think more than 1/5 of the population is in this, somewhere in this region. And this is also the region which is most vulnerable to climate change, because a lot of people are in the low-lying regions with little access to adaptation and mitigation measures. And also this is a tropical region where the weathers, where we have fast-moving weather, where the extreme events are much more stronger or intense and more frequent than other regions like in the subtropics. That's also one reason, like we say that in the US and Europe, which is in the subtropics, the weather is not that fast moving. And there are other factors also, which is why it's easy to forecast the weather, but it's much more difficult over the tropical regions. Yeah. Now, why oceans? If you look at where the heat from all those emissions have gone, which element in the earth has absorbed most of the heat, it is not land, it's not atmosphere or ice. Atmosphere, land, and ice all together takes up only 7% of the additional heat from global warming. So it's the mighty oceans that have taken up 93% of the heat from the emissions. I'm not talking about the science of climate change much here, but for getting into the focus of the oceans. In fact, the heat that's absorbed by the oceans is so large, because oceans are also big, deep reservoir. The depth of ocean is like 4 kilometers, and they cover more than 73% of the earth, right? The additional heat absorbed by the oceans is equivalent to 7 Hiroshima atomic bombs detonating each second, 24 hours a day for 365 days a year, throughout every year. So that much heat is getting absorbed every second now. And the ocean throws back the heat back at us. And if you look at the oceans, all these ocean basins like Pacific, Atlantic, and all, it's the Indian Ocean which is the fastest warming. And this is from the recent IPCC report, sixth assessment report, of which I was also part of, showed that since the 1950s, during the last 70 years, the fastest surface warming has occurred in the Indian Ocean. And on the right, you have, there are many numbers and all, don't bother about these numbers, but look at some of them, like showing 1.2, 1.2, 1.3 and all. Those are very large numbers. That's the change that we have seen from 1950. Now, if we compare it with global surface temperature change, which is about 1 degree Celsius from 1900 until now. This change from 1950 until 2015 is about 1.2, 1.3 degrees Celsius over some regions. That's quite large, a change. And it's basin-wide. Across the Indian Ocean, you see red colors. All those red colors show incessant warming across Indian Ocean. So if The mean temperatures were like 28, 29 degrees Celsius. 1.2 will mean 30, 30.2 or 31 degrees Celsius, which makes a large change. Now, how are these extreme weather events manifesting as a result? One of the most salient impacts from warming of the Indian Ocean and also due to large-scale global warming are the changes in the monsoon patterns. So all these Indian Ocean region, whether it's Africa, South Asia, East Asia, including Philippines, we have people from Philippines as well, and many other regions, and even Australia. The changes in rainfall are stark. So what is happening is that as the air warms, warmer air holds more moisture and for a longer time. This is for all this region, this is one of the most important point to note. So you don't have to understand any particular physics or mathematics or anything like that or any particular science. But if the air is warmer, it holds more moisture and for a longer time. So what is the end result? It doesn't rain for a long time, but when it rains, all that moisture absorbed, it rains in a very short time. So instead of the rain spread out for the entire season, like the entire monsoon season, you might get a week's or a month's rain in just few hours or a few days time. So that's why we are having more droughts or dry periods intermittent with floods. So that's a particular change in the monsoon pattern, and we see that across. And the spread of floods is particularly across South Asia and Southeast Asia also. And we have droughts or dry periods happening in several regions like Central India, parts of Africa, and also Australia because of the warming in the ocean. I'm not getting into the mechanisms of all that. Yeah. And also there are cascading impacts. You see, I've written locust swarms here. So what happens is that as the ocean warms, it can support more storms. So generally this region, we do not have a lot of rains, but as the ocean is warming, it's supporting more convective systems, more rains. So in 2018-19 period, the East African region received a lot of rains, triggered a lot of vegetation over this region, a lot of vegetation. And as a result, the locust swarms started over there. And these locust swarms, they picked up the winds and the moisture, traveled across the Arabian Peninsula, reached North India, and even traveled to Central and South India as well. So that was a huge period of locust swarms all over this region, entire region. So you can see how multiple factors are working together: the ocean, the atmosphere, and then the biosphere with the locusts and all. And we saw photos coming from Central India where the birds were eating locusts, which was kind of unseasonal, not the kind of food that they used to eat. So change in monsoon patterns. Then comes another major extreme weather event: cyclones and storm surges. Now, Arabian Sea used to be area where we used to have a lot of cyclones, but now, Bay of Bengal. But now the silent Arabian Sea also is having a tremendous number of cyclones in the recent years, a 50% increase in the number of cyclones over that region. And these cyclones push a lot of waves and storm water onto the coastal side, affecting the coastal communities. Waves high as 5 meters to 10 meters, impacting coastal flooding. And terrestrial heat waves, particularly over the Indo-Pak region. And last day I was talking to Charles, and he said there was a short respite, but if you look at the entire period, like March, April, and May, this entire Indo-Pak region was burning. It was one of the strongest heat waves in recorded history. the significance was that it's not just intensity, it was spread over the entire season, a season long heat wave, not just a week long or month long, season long heat wave. And you see that I call them as terrestrial heat waves, not just heat waves. Why? Particular reason, because heat waves are occurring in the ocean also, and we call them marine heat waves. So these are like sporadic events, patches of warm water in the ocean that leads to coral bleaching, and they are seen to impact cyclones also. And coming to the marine biodiversity, there are these phytoplankton. These are microscopic plants in the ocean that support. So if you take a deep breath now, more than 50% of the oxygen came from marine phytoplankton millions of years ago. And this is also declining because of rapid ocean warming. And sea level rise is an overarching change which is across the Indian Ocean region. All these regions have high sea level rise. Yeah. So these are some of the extreme weather events that the Indian Ocean is facing. We are looking at that, and many of these are coming at our doorsteps. That is all because of that 1 degree Celsius change in global temperatures. But if you are looking forward, the change that we are going to see is much more, because carbon dioxide emissions are continuing unabated. So this is the change that we have seen until now, until 2020. But if we move forward, we are going to see a change of up to 3.8 degrees Celsius. If you are going to take the highway, this is a highway. High emissions as usual. 3.8 degrees Celsius per century change in the Indian Ocean. And even as a scientist, I can't imagine the changes that come with that. So I will just focus on 1 or 2 events. One is cyclones. And as ocean warm, it provides more moisture and heat for cyclones to form and intensify. We see cyclones like Cyclone Amphan, the Bay of Bengal, intensifying from category 1 speed to category 5. That's like intensifying from a very weak cyclone of 100 km/h to 250 km/h cyclone. So you're going to sleep thinking that is a weak cyclone, but waking up seeing that your roof is already gone because it had developed to an intense cyclone. So these things are happening. One of the reasons is the oceans are having intense temperatures supporting these kind of systems. So normally temperatures should be like this, yellow colors, which means around 28, 29 degrees Celsius. But we see that in the recent period, even just before cyclones, temperatures are reaching record temperatures of 32, 33 degrees Celsius. And then there are compound events. I will show two very short videos. I know time is short. I will show 2 short videos from the west and east coast of India due to Cyclone Tote and Cyclone Yas. One is Cyclone Tote from west coast. See those strong waves lashing onto the coast and inundating the coastal region. Now let us look at the east coast. The picture is slightly different. It may be difficult for you to understand, but the flooding was much more inland for a moderate cyclone like Cyclone Yas. It went more than 60 kilometers inland. So what happened there was, Cyclone Tote was an extremely severe cyclone, but the impact of Cyclone Yas, which was a weak cyclone, was much more, because this cyclone impacted with in multiple ways. So there was storm surge due to huge waves. There was rainwater. Cyclones are bringing more rains than ever. So this cyclone brought more rains. And the sea level rise, it is not uniform across Indian Ocean. The Bay of Bengal region, the sea level rise was much more. And unfortunately, it all coincided with a natural event called the high tide, raising the flood water. Yeah. So we have to think this sea level rise is rising year by year, decade by decade. So if you have a storm, same storm surge a decade after or a few years later, the flooding will be much more. Inland intrusion of salt water, all that salt water have damaged the agriculture of that region for years to come. Now, if you go back to the ocean, the same marine heat waves that we see in the ocean are damaging corals also. Now, why corals? Why do we should we focus on corals? Corals occupy only 0.1% of the globe's surface, but more than 25% of the marine biodiversity are around coral reefs. So what happens when you have very high temperatures? Generally, corals have very colorful nature, right? And this is because they have a mucous membrane. It's called zooxanthellae. I have written here. That provides the color and shield. But when there are high temperatures, it bleaches them away. And if it happens again and again, they die off. And along with that, the marine species too. So similarly, there have been impacts on fisheries as well. I show a graph here where the tuna population has gone down. But this is not just because of climate change. So that is the point I want to tell you. This is actually because of industrial fishing over the last several years. Now, ocean warming and decline in phytoplankton and all will be an added stressor on this. Yeah. So similarly, it's affecting other fisheries as well. Sardine catches are projected to go down in the future. So it will affect, we see that all these impacts are affecting our food and water security over the region. Now, I showed you about the bramble cave melanie. That was in the fringes of Indian Ocean. And now this is happening in very close to us. This is a satellite picture of the Wan Island, which is in the south of Bay of Bengal near Gulf of Mannar. This was a few decades ago. You see what is happening now. It's sinking, slowly sinking underwater. Now there are attempts. I will show a quick 2 or 3 slides on how people are trying to adapt to it. One way is to restore coral reefs and seagrass. There are some institutions along the east coast of India in Chennai, Sugandhi Institute and all. They have been planting seagrass, finding the better tolerant varieties of seagrass and planting over that region. And slowly they are building back the island. And they see that the fishes are coming back. So they see this graph shows how from 2014 to 2016, how the fishes have come back after seagrass restoration. Yeah. And the same is a case of our regions also, whether we take the Himalayan regions, foothills and the rivers there, or the Western Ghats there, or any of the South Asian countries. Yeah. It's not always climate change that's the only culprit. We are directly intervening with the topography also, with the land as well. So rivers should generally meander like this. So when there are heavy rains, extreme rains that are increasing, there are floodplains to sink and spread out. So the river goes back into the shape. But we are trying to align the river in particular ways and encroach it like this, right? So when there are heavy rain events, the entire area floods because there is no floodplain, there is no forest to sink in or to absorb that water. So whenever we talk about climate change, we have to be careful not to give a one-sided story. It's also based on how we interact with nature. It can be due to illegal construction, it can be due to horrible planning, multiple factors that aggravate the climate change that we are seeing. I think I have just 2 more slides. I think that's okay, Charles. Can I spend 2 minutes?
Please go ahead. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. So this is a picture. Maybe you can recognize it immediately. It's from Mumbai. Yeah. So on the forefront, you see the sea lashing onto this woman and to their house. Maybe that water is going inside their house as well. Yeah. This is what we are facing right now. But if you look at far away, we see the high-rise buildings, which may be at a slightly higher altitude, and these waves have no impact over them. So what it means is that most of this climate change, at least at the moment, has the highest impact on the most vulnerable of the population. And we see that there's a lot of domestic migration coming from the other regions to these coastal cities, which are facing a different kind of climate change. And this is an aerial picture of almost the same region, the high-rise buildings and the mostly slum areas which are nearer to the coast. So you see all those blue patches, it looks beautiful. Those are tarpaulin roofs. Yeah. So if a cyclone comes or a heavy rains come, we don't know if it is their roofs that get blown off first, or it's the floor that gets flooded. Yeah. But there is another important point here. There is to be a river here. You see that line in the middle? That is supposed to be the Mithi River flowing through the through Mumbai to the Arabian Sea, but it's totally encroached, and there is to be mangroves in this region. So when city floods, it cannot. There are no rivers. It's that river is converted to a small canal. It's not even a canal. Yeah, it's just a line over there, and there are no mangroves, which are usually the lungs of the city, absorbing that storm water and all. So multiple factors are there, and if we are trying to adapt or mitigate, there also we need to look at ecosystem based adaptation measures. If you don't adapt, no response, the sea will take our houses. With protection, something may be possible, but the best method that is proposed is ecosystem based adaptation. So many times ecosystem only adaptation may not be possible. So we need to see mix of different adaptation measures. But one of the most working adaptation measures along some regions along the coast is mangroves, because they can catch both the flood water and also they can minimize the strength of cyclones. Yeah. So with all that, I am coming to my last slide, which shows that we need a collective effort for a climate resilient future. We need to monitor these changes. We need different agencies to work towards that. I have myself worked with citizen science networks, that is community-based approach, where eco-Jesuits can also join. Because national agencies, global agencies, they don't have a reach at local level. The most important point of climate change is, though climate change is global, the impacts are local, the solutions are also local. So we need to work at local levels with communities and local administration as well. But also we need departments working together. So if we have all that, we can probably work towards a climate resilient future. Yeah. So thanks for listening to me. We have a lot of collaborators. In fact, I'm co-chairing a panel on the Indian Ocean. It's called the Indian Ocean Region Panel, but this is mostly geared towards scientific insights and observations in the Indian Ocean. We also have an Indian Ocean network. So all this, whatever you saw, was in collaboration with a huge team that you see, including the IPCC team. And the UN has a UN Decade of Ocean, where we all are working with. I think the eco-Jesuits are also working with. Yeah. So thanks a lot. I'm ready for questions. I think we have a question time later. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Proxy, for that very insightful session on the impact of climate change on the Indian Oceans and how it is affecting us gradually, for presenting it in a very simple and understandable way for us, and especially highlighting how it is gradually affecting our lives, the coastal areas, the coastal erosion, and what are some of the measures that can be taken up, and also what collective effort is needed. So thank you very much for that session. I would like to now invite if there are any questions. I see one question in the chat box. I will read it out for you. So is from Dr. J. Gerald Wilson. Is it possible to control climate change? Is there any positive results so far?
Very interesting, very important question. This is what comes to our mind first, right? Okay, we have emitted all these carbon emissions, and is it possible to control? So one important aspect about greenhouse gas emission, particularly carbon dioxide, which is a major culprit here, it has a long lifespan of hundreds to thousands of years. So about 40% of it will get absorbed by the atmosphere, land, and get mixed and all in about 100 years. But beyond that, the absorption of those carbon emissions are a very slow process, because the ocean absorbs it at a very slow process. So it's, even if we stop all carbon emissions, we stop all our factories, industries, our cars, our electricity, everything, our computer systems, Zoom meetings, everything, right now, still the impacts will go on, because that carbon dioxide is going to stay for the next several years. Now, there have been attempts to reduce the impact of climate change. One way is, the only way to reduce the impact that we see right now is by extracting carbon dioxide back from atmosphere. And so far, we do not have, there are attempts, but we do not have efficient ways of doing that, and we don't see that happening in the next several decades. Yeah, so there is one setup which is trying to extract carbon dioxide, but that is able to extract only after running 1 year, it's able to extract 1 minute of carbon dioxide emission, and that is much more expensive, because it needs much more energy to run that. So they are emitting more. Yeah. Another thing that we can do is to find energy efficient modes or products. Yeah. Or energy efficient motors and cars and all, so that in the future we emit less. So whatever impacts that we see right now do not accelerate further or intensify further in the future. So that is the major aim. It should not, what we are seeing right now is response of that 1 degree Celsius. Yeah, it should not reach that 2 degrees Celsius where the impacts are double. But right now, based on the national commitments, we are reaching there by 2060. 1.5 degree by 2040 and 2 degrees Celsius by 2060. Thank you.
I see another question in the chat box. Two more questions and one hands raised. I'll come to you as per the times that have been appeared chat box. The second question is how to control coastal erosion. Is it compatible to use concrete blocks?
Yeah, so there is one thing happening along the coast across most of South Asia. One thing is, and maybe in East Asia also, wherever there is coastal erosion, coastal inundation, floods and all, we are just simply throwing rocks and tetrapods to control the sea level. But you saw those huge waves and all, and the amount of flooding that has happened. Nothing can stop that kind of huge extreme weather events and sea level rise. So we need to find alternate methods, which is kind of integration of this artificial seawall building along with other environmental methods like mangroves and all. Yeah, but mangroves also may not work in all situations. Some regions the mangroves may not work. Yeah, and in some regions where mangroves work, there are only some kinds of mangroves that will work over there. So we need more research on what kind of methods work in particular areas. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Rakshi. The next question is, apart from ocean acidification, is there any multiple stresses that affect the biodiversity rapidly?
Yeah, very much, very much. I guess you are talking about marine biodiversity. So one example is deoxygenation. The ocean is getting deprived of oxygen. It's the same thing like carbon dioxide. As ocean warms, it cannot absorb more of these atmospheric gases. So less carbon dioxide is absorbed, so the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere will also go up. Similarly, less oxygen is getting, the solubility of oxygen or gases is less. Yeah. So as a result, there are hypoxic conditions in the ocean. In naturally itself, there are some regions where we call oxygen minimum zones are there, where the fishes may not thrive, marine biodiversity may thrive. We see that these zones are expanding. So when there is less soluble or dissolved oxygen in the ocean, it affects some marine biodiversity, including the fisheries. And we see that happening more and more. But we need more understanding, because who is going down and measuring this oxygen? There are only few instruments in the ocean. We need monitoring in the ocean. We cannot do that with satellites. Surface temperature, satellite can measure. Surface winds, satellite can measure. But the ocean down, there are only few instruments in the Indian Ocean. That's one actually one limitation that we have.
I see Punita's hands raised. Can I request you to unmute and ask your question if you have?
Yeah, thank you, Charles. And that was a very nice presentation by Dr. Roxy, focusing more on the impacts and about the preparation parts that the community can do. Dr. Roxy, I would also request if you can also focus on the sources of carbon emission, like air pollution and climate change, and how air pollution is contributing to the climate change. And I really beg to differ on a point where you said, that local impacts and because I feel that climate change has no boundaries, and the impacts of climate change also has no boundaries. I feel that in Indian state, in the nation, in India also, if we see the major contributors of CO2 carbon emissions are the middle richest states, the Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, which has more of the thermal power plants. And but the impacts of climate change are also being experienced, the different levels, at different states in a different way. Somewhere we have gone high on the zoonotic diseases, somewhere we have gone, the livelihood, the fishes have started migrating, especially in the coastal regions. The level is going down. So I personally feel that there are no boundaries of the impacts of climate change. And so this is what I feel. And I also request if you can
just to disrupt you, I didn't get where we are differing. The point that you made is the same point that I made, that just that it's different at different local levels. That's all.
So like what is happening, the major contributors of climate change, like we can say that the thermal power plants, air pollution is directly contributing to climate change, because that's the only source which increases the level of CO2. And but the impacts, what we are experiencing because of the global warming, is experienced at all the levels. Maybe at the coastal region, the things are a little different compared to what is happening in the areas which are full of forest, because there are many zoonotic diseases which are coming up in the forest dominated areas like Nagaland.
Yeah. I agree with you. I agree with you on that.
So what I mean to say that the impacts, the climate change has no boundaries, and the impacts also has no boundaries. I may be wrong if I am misunderstanding.
Yeah, I think maybe let me answer. Maybe you might have more questions beyond this. But so my point was, climate change is of course global. Yeah. So and the particular reason is whether it is US emitting, Europe emitting, which were the largest emitters in the including Russia and Japan and all in the earlier period. Now China and India has joined the bandwagon. So wherever you emit, carbon dioxide mixes well with the air, and it is widespread. It's well mixed and widespread. So the impacts are everywhere. Yeah. What I meant is the impacts are different from one locality to another locality. Yeah. So when we want to work I will give an example from, I'm originally from Kerala. Yeah. So it's a small state. Yeah. And when an individual asks, so this is something what I see James Potengel also has asked. So when an individual asks, what can I do for climate change? I said the climate change has gone beyond individual levels or national levels. Yeah, it is a global level thing. that if you want to act, we need global cohesion, collective efforts to bring down that emission. One nation cannot do that. All nations have to do it together. Yeah. But if you look at individual levels or district levels or even a state level, yeah, in terms of mitigation, there are limitations. They cannot wait for the globe to act because the climate change is already here. The ocean, Kerala saw back-to-back floods since 2018, 2019, 2020 also. Yeah, every year across India, across South Asia, we are seeing that. So we cannot wait for the globe to act together. We need to work on local adaptation. And for local adaptation, we need to understand the local impacts, which is quite different. What the impact on a coastal city like Manila will be totally different from another coastal city like Mumbai. Impact of Himalayan foothills will be totally different from Western Ghats in South India. So it is that kind of local impacts that I am reaching at. Yeah, because some region is heat waves, Indo-Pakistan region is so. Some regions you have locusts. So the impacts are totally different, though climate change is global. Yeah, and so the solutions are also local because we need to understand how it is changed locally and then work towards it. Some region we might be having floods and floods every year. Mumbai, take example, floods every year. So it has to work towards floods. It doesn't have to work towards heat waves immediately. That's the point I was telling. So I agree that climate change doesn't have border. It is global. It's everywhere. But there is one point also there. It is impacting the tropical South Asian nations more than the other nations. That's because of the particular geographic location. So on all three sides of South Asia, you have the ocean, which is changing rapidly. It is the tropical ocean, which is changing rapidly. And on the north, you have the Himalayas, which is changing rapidly again. Yeah. So the changes that we see are much more rapid, intense. And because of the high population, it's also much more impactful. Damage is huge than any other region. So that's all the point. So I don't think we differ. It's just maybe
rather I think I would put it this way, like that the solution should be global while the preparation should be local.
The solution in terms of see, we need
because
to work
I cannot solve locally. I actually cannot solve climate change because it's
you cannot solve climate change, but you can adapt to some local changes.
Yeah, solution should be global while preparation should be local.
So
solution should be global.
Yeah.
Preparation should be localized.
So carbon dioxide emissions should be reduced globally. Yeah. Mitigation, we call it. But at the same time, adaptation should be local. And we cannot wait for that global mitigation to work out for local adaptation measures.
Yeah, and one more thing regarding
sorry to interrupt. We are just running out of time. I know this is a very interesting session, but unfortunately, we will definitely have another very long 2-3 days event, if possible in person, having Dr. Roxy. But today, I'm really very sorry, won't be able to take any more questions.
I would love to just quickly answer.
Yes,
I think it's, I remember this name also, Father James Portingal. Maybe I have met him somewhere. So the question is very important as an individual, what you can do, particularly ocean climate change. The most important thing, what I have seen is to elect members at local administration, panchayat level to district to state to national level. Yeah, elect members who care about climate and environment. That's the only way we can work towards reducing the oceanic climate change. Thank you. We need it as a poll agenda.
Thank you, Dr. Roxy, for patiently answering all those questions. I know it's a very complex subject, and certainly this needs more time, but thank you very much for taking all those questions and clarifying our doubts. Due to the paucity of time, I would like to move on to the next session. We have with us Ms. Cheryl Dugan from Philippines to share on the Laudato Si movement. I would like to call upon Suman to introduce and hand over the session to Cheryl.
Thank you so much, Charles, sir. Cheryl Dugan works with the Laudato Si movement, formerly the Global Catholic Climate Movement, as the programs manager for Asia Pacific and English speaking animators. Cheryl Dougal is a non-profit leader with years of experience working with international non-government organizations with proven track record in building partnerships. She had grown and engaged networks as well as designed and implemented programs, campaigns, and trainings across continents. Today, she leads the campaigns and programs in Laudato Si movement in her region. She also supports the grassroots leaders as they collectively work to achieve the mission of the movement, which is to inspire and mobilize the Catholic community to care for our common house and achieve climate and ecological justice. Her work with the movement allows her to support others in their development as change makers and leaders and makes a positive impact on one of the most pressing issues of our time, the climate change and ecological crisis. So over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Suman, for that very nice introduction. And thank you, Dr. Roxy. That was a very enlightening presentation. So good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Cheryl. I'm based in Manila. And I'm, as mentioned, I'm Programs Manager for Asia Pacific for Laudato Si movement. I am very excited to be here with you. And I'm proud to say that I'm also a product of the Jesuit education, having graduated from the Ateneo de Manila University in the Philippines. And so I'm really, really grateful to be with you all today. So I was asked to share about Laudato Si movement and our work in the region, and I'll just share briefly my screen, if I can be allowed to share it.
Sure, Cheryl, I'm just making it.
Okay, thank you.
I think you can now.
Okay, thank you. So this is a picture from Typhoon Haiyan way back 2013. And I wanted to say that Laudato Si movement has, so to speak, a very strong tie with historical tie with Asia and with Philippines in particular. So our executive director, Tomas Insua, who is the co-founder of this movement, experienced his ecological conversion when he visited the communities devastated by Typhoon Haiyan way back in 2014. So he visited a few months after the typhoon. But he was very bothered by the injustice of how communities, such as those he visited, which contributed really very little to greenhouse gas emissions, have suffered that much. And they had to suffer the burden of climate change. And also during that year, he went to a very big protest in New York. They are protesting against climate change, and he was very bothered as well because the Catholics were very much underrepresented in that particular rally. So what he did was connect with organizations and individuals who are working in the same space in ecology and climate change. And he was lucky to have connected with 12 leaders and 17 organizations from all over the globe. So they came together and became the foundational group that formed GCCM. We were called the Global Catholic Climate Movement then, and now the Laudato Si movement, and became, so they came together to form part of this movement. And our LSM board founding president is here in this call, Amy Echeverria of the Columbans. So the founding group drafted a foundational statement, which was delivered by Cardinal Tagle during Pope Francis's visit to the Philippines in January 2015. And at that point, the Global Catholic Climate Movement, now the LSM, was launched. And the mission then was to bring Laudato Si. Laudato Si was not yet out then, but the mission was to bring Laudato Si to life, the upcoming encyclical, and to make sure that this beautiful encyclical that Pope Francis gave us will not just remain in document, but for the Catholic community to actually really live Laudato Si. And so now we are a young movement. We are a network of Catholic institutions, organizations, and individuals working together and collectively for our common home. So globally, we draw on the strengths and combined gifts of nearly 9,000 certified Laudato Si animators and more than 900 member organizations. And we are working closely with both the Vatican and the local church wherever we are. And in Asia alone, we have more than 1,000 Laudato Si animators animating their communities to live Laudato Si. And we also have hundreds of member organizations. In Asia, as mentioned, we are a young movement. So we have these chapters. We have a continental chapter in Oceania. We have 5 chapters in Asia, which are in the Philippines, Myanmar, Korea, Indonesia, and Timor-Leste. So our chapters are working very closely and supporting the care for creation work of our local churches. So the Philippines, for example, the Philippine chapter is now part of the National Laudato Si program of the Bishops' Conference, and our Indonesia chapter has also recently became part of the program of the JPIC of their Bishops' Conference to support grassroots organizing, particularly for the implementation of the Laudato Si Action Platform. And also the leader of our continental chapter in Australia is working closely with the preparatory committee for the General Assembly of the Federation of Catholic Bishops' Conference of Oceania. And we support the formation of grassroots leaders who want to animate their communities on Laudato Si through our free online training program called the Laudato Si Animators Program. So our English program actually brings together participants from 6 continents. And very recently, our Indonesian chapter also offered this in their language. Our programs, the programs that we implement in Asia and all the other regions fall within this 3 framework or strategic goals: the ecological conversion, full sustainability, and prophetic advocacy. And the prophetic advocacy goal is about influencing the public. So one of our flagship program is our divestment program to actually block the expansion of fossil fuel industry. It is because the fossil fuels remain to be the main drivers of global warming. And over the years, the number of Catholic institutions and faith institutions who have announced that they will be divesting from fossil fuel investments continue to grow in number. Our newest program under the goal of prophetic advocacy is on biodiversity. It's very new. We only started it last year. And we are doing this because the biodiversity crisis is an unnoticed crisis. So even if it matches the scale and severity of the climate crisis. And the church is already starting to do a great work with indigenous peoples, for example, in most critical tropical rainforests, through the Rawen, for example, in Asia and Oceania, or the river above Asia and Oceania Ecclesial Network led by Father Walpole. And Laudato Si movements also want to have our contribution in the biodiversity conversation. So one of our programs, which we launched during the pandemic last year, was Healthy Planet, Healthy People petition, which advocate for biodiversity protection during upcoming global moments like the COP26 last year or the Climate Summit, and possibly in the UN Ocean Summit coming in June, and the Biodiversity Summit happening also soon, and the COP27 Summit happening later this year. And the petition calls for this 4 things. So tackle the climate emergency and biodiversity crisis together. Limit the warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius and promise no more biodiversity loss. As mentioned by Dr. Roxy, we could not imagine how a warming of 3.8 degrees would affect us all. The third call would be to ensure equitable global action. And to protect and respect the human rights during this biodiversity and climate action, including, and of course, more importantly, the rights of indigenous peoples and local communities. And we are complementing this global program at the region. So we are also launching 2 campaigns next month. The first one would be the Stop Deforestation campaign, which of course includes mangrove deforestation, which because mangrove forests are also facing similar decline. And the second would be Protecting the Oceans campaign. The objectives of this campaign is increase awareness and visibility around the depletion of forests and degradation of marine environment and how it aggravates the impacts of climate change. Second is to engage Catholic communities and people of faith to commit to the protection of forests and oceans, and to demand our national and regional governments to commit to have policies to stop deforestation and degradation of the ocean. Third is to highlight the role and importance of indigenous peoples and local communities as keepers of our common home and agents of change in decision-making and action. An important component of these regional campaigns is to make people aware also of existing initiatives happening in the region. And I am sure the Jesuits have many initiatives around this, and we will be very happy to share your initiatives, your stories, your programs, and feature them in this campaign. And I would also like to mention that at this point, we are also collaborating, LSM is collaborating with various Oceanian and Asian networks to make happen a side event at the UN Oceans Summit to raise the Catholic voice and the stories of Oceanian peoples in this important conversation about the much needed global ocean action. Just briefly, under sustainability, we also have, we provide operational support for the Laudato Si Action Platform, a Vatican-led program to achieve, which aims to achieve full sustainability in the spirit of integral ecology. So in the region, we have supported the design phase of this program by organizing focused group discussions with community leaders and engaging people and groups to be part of the working groups. Also in partnership with the Federation of Asian Bishops' Conferences Climate Change Desk, we have organized a regional webinar last year to raise awareness on the platform and to invite participation. Also, eco-conversion is one of the big goals of the movement, and we aim to encourage a more passionate concern for a common home in the hearts of the Catholic faithful, and to, of course, enshrine creation care as a Catholic priority. One of the programs is us promoting and supporting the logistical support, providing logistical support to the season of creation, which happens from September 1 to October 4. So this is an ecumenical event where people, where Christian communities pray together or take action for our common home. And the last program, which I wanted to share with you, and I'm really excited to talk about this, is this one. So the Laudato Si Encyclical, which is the cornerstone of everything we do in the movement, is unfortunately still vastly unknown. And thus LSM thought that a film is the best tool to make the message of encyclical known. So we believe that a compelling storytelling is required to help the church and humanity become aware of the ecological crisis, become ecologically converted, and take action. Thus, the Laudato Si movement and an Oscar-winning film production company called Off the Fence has produced a Laudato Si film. It is called The Invitation, and this is done in collaboration with the Vatican's Dicastery for Communication and Vatican's Dicastery for Promoting Integral Human Development. The film will be released later this year, and I would like to take this chance to invite the Jesuit Conference of India, the Jesuit Conference of South Asia, and the ECHO Jesuits to participate in the film as a partner. The film will feature Pope Francis and follows the story of 4 frontline champions from different continents. So the film is actually meant to complement your initiatives and your programs. And we are hoping that the partners or you will use the film by doing community screenings to engage everyone to take action, to care for our common home, and to care for the oceans. So please consider this as an invitation to be the Laudato Si film partner, and we are hoping that you will be able to make use of it as another tool for to further your advocacy on marine biodiversity. And this brings me to the end of my 10-minute presentation. I am happy to invite you to participate in any of our programs, and if this would complement and support your initiatives. I am very grateful to spend this time with you today during the Laudato Si Week. And thank you to the Jesuit Conference of India and South Asia. Thank you especially to Charles for inviting me to be with you. Very honored to be part of this program.
Thank you, Cheryl, for that very input session on and giving us a bird's eye view of the Laudato Si movement and what is happening around the globe, and the whole initiative to care for our common home, the Mother Earth, and also about the animators program, various training programs that are available for partners to kind of engage in actions at the grassroots levels. I would, at this point, request our partners to get in touch with you if they want their few programs or if they want to attend the training. We will share her email ID after the event when we share the report of the event. I would like to now move on to the next session. We have with us Dr. Victor Roach from Loyola College, Chennai. And he'll be speaking on he'll be giving a status update on the marine biodiversity, fisheries, and fishing communities in India. So I would like to call upon Suman to introduce Dr. Victor and hand over the session to her.
Thank you so much, sir. So Dr. Victor Ross is an educationist and a scientist working as an assistant professor in the Department of Plant Biology and Biotechnology, Loyola College, Chennai. Dr. Victor is a plant biotechnologist with over a decade of research experience working in the education and research industry, providing valuable expertise to research and development. He has worked on several scientific research projects and have mastered concepts of plant biotechnology with respect to foxtail millets and herbal medical plants. He is also the director of Pondicherry University, Loyola College Society, and has published many research studies and papers along with top scientists, namely S. Ignasimuthu, T. Maharajan, T.P. Ajesh Krishna, and M. Ramakrishnan, and others. So over to you.
Good evening. Am I audible?
Yes, Dr.
Yes. Good evening to everyone, and thanks to Roxy and Cheryl for keeping the platform and the canvas set ready for my sharing this evening. So I will be sharing on the current status on marine biodiversity, fisheries, and fishing communities in India. And I will be also touching the Laudato Si, how we can learn from it. And I will not go into detail as Roxy has said that very clearly how it can affect the marine biodiversity is disturbed. So Pope Francis in this encyclical says, I would like to enter into dialogue with all people about our common home. And that is why we are this evening having this webinar and maybe keeping our antenna alert, how we can combinedly do something for this taking care of the common home. So thinking about India, it is one among the 17 mega biodiversity countries of the world, almost covering 8,000 kilometers, distributed again 9 coastal states, 4 union territories. Almost 20% of the total coastline is of 2 islands, Andaman and Nicobar and Lakshadweep. And then we have also got exclusive economic zones covering 2.2 million square kilometers. And we have got also 2,000 nautical miles from the land. Okay, all these tell us about the biodiversity richness of our nation. And this is to situate as the entire area of a country is 3.29 million, and where the coastal line alone 8,118, and we have got the exclusive economic zone about 2.2 million square kilometers, and the continental shelf area covering almost 9 maritime states and then 2 union territories, 2 island territories. And starting from the smallest plankton, zooplanktons, up to the biggest whales, we have got very rich biodiversity in the Indian Ocean, and this is to give us the foretaste or the glimpse of the richness in terms of both plants and animals that we have in the sea, the ocean. So oceans and coastal regions are coming under rising environmental pressures worldwide, and that is where the Laudato Si has a very positive and then alert, kind of alarming signal for us to wake up and then do something positively about it. These growing stresses lead to habitat destruction, both in the land and more so in the ocean, biodiversity loss, and land-based marine pollution, over exploitation of the resources, and then increasing impact of greenhouse gas emissions and the global climate change all contribute towards that. And it affects the poorest most. And fishermen community is one such communities that is getting affected, because they are intrinsically connected to the nature. If nature is affected, and these poor people also will get automatically affected. So what will be the status of fisheries and fishing communities? When you say fisheries, it means a number of things. It means an industry where there is an organized fishing is there as an occupation, catching, processing, selling of fish and other aquatic animals are there. Is where the fish and other aquatic animals are caught. Is a business. Is a hatchery of fish and the legal right also to fish. So all these means fisheries. So India is the third largest fish producing nation, second largest aquaculture nation, the world after China. And then after the blue revolution, it contributes enormously for the Indian economy. So we will see, these are data taken from our own fishery ministry, where fisheries alone, contributing a lot, along with crops, forestry and livestock, agriculture, forestry, and so on. And the trend of contribution is increasing, and it is given to the gross value added along with the agriculture sector, where from 2011 up to 1890 20 it increases. That is to say, it plays a very vital role in the Indian economy as well. And in the US dollar it is given, the trending of export of fish and fish products in over the years from 2011 to up to 1920, where despite corona we have almost matching with the previous year. So what is the status of fishermen in India as per the Central Marine Fishery Research Institute? We have got around 4 million fishermen in India, and approximately and unfortunately 61% of the fishermen are living below the poverty line. And we have got 3,288 fishing villages and 1,511 marine fishing land centers, and we have of them 76% are Hindus, 50% 15 are Christians, and 9 were Muslims, and also 17% of SC and STs also involved in that fishing occupation. And fisherman population in each state is given. And fisheries are the primary source of livelihood for several communities. We have said so many pockets or fishermen communities are there. And India being the world's second largest fish producer and exporting almost 47,000 crores annually. And it also takes care of the food and the nutritional security of our nation. So that is very important, apart from employment and income that is being taken care. It's a direct source of livelihood for 20 million fishers and fish farmers, and 1.7 trillion annually is the gross value added to Indian economy, all things put together. The average family size of the fishermen families are 4.63, and then ratio of male female because here the women are the most affected even among the fisher community, and 38% of the marine fisher folk are engaged in active fishing and full-time engagement, and then 36.6% are fishing and allied activities like fish seed collection and so on. So what are the some of the developments or activities by the National Fisheries Development Board? It has strengthened the database and then information system, and then developed inland fisheries and aquaculture, and then welfare schemes for the fishermen are there at the national level, and then marine fisheries and then infrastructure, post-harvest operations are developed, and it has got monitoring and control surveillance, and the institutional arrangement for the fishery sectors also are in place. So how do we see that inland and marine? So the fishing is done in marine, and there are so many fishermen are involved in inland as well in the fishing occupation. Okay, male alone 83%, okay, and female 81 in the inland, and then 17, 18. At an average, almost 18% of the total population are in the fishing or fishery work. And then I needless to say, that's to give just one example of the fish alone. Okay, how many are becoming endangered or are highly they are at risk due to all these collective human-made okay, deterioration in the ocean as well. So these are some of the species that are in a very high risk that they are becoming extinct in day by day. And more than men, as I said already, women are more exposed to the climate change due to social, economic, and political reasons, and they are very vulnerable, because fishermen community itself, the roles and identities are not so very clear. They are neither static nor homogeneous, and there is also interaction with the caste, income, geographic location, age, household membership. All these contribute towards that. And there is also gender differentiated higher risk, both as individual groups and community members in comparison to men. And then as Roxy already talked about the climate change, how it is increasing the sea level and bleaching of these coral reefs. And then toxic level is increasing, as some of the algae can survive well with a high level of carbon dioxide, and then habitats are being disturbed. Acidification of the ocean and disruption in the fisheries are some of them that that is very vivid in our day-to-day observations in the oceans. So what are the factors that impacting marine ecosystem on a daily basis? The ocean currents, as it moves from one direction to another due to various reasons, climate change and so on, the food chain is interrupted and it is becoming unavailable to the organisms in the ocean. And also the warm water, that is increased temperature in the ocean, and it also plays havoc with the oxygen level. All these contributes to the loss of biodiversity in marine. We are all interlinked. If the organisms are lost, and we are going to be lost sooner. And then overfishing in the ocean, that's also another. Not all contribute to the climate change alone. And the chemical levels that we are dumping all the chemicals from the industries into the sea, where this enormously affecting the sea creatures. And then temperatures, global warming, sea level increase, and then ozone depletion all contributes to this disturbance of biodiversity in the ocean. Acidification of the ocean, very especially SO and NO, and then CO2, all these, and then bleaching of coral reefs. Not getting into detail because already Roxy has covered it. Then pollution, water, noise, plastic, and then land runoff into the ocean, and then ocean dumping that we do. And the picture here tells us how, and we have witnessed number of times, when fish is cut, and then we see number of plastics also available inside. And then bioaccumulation, these chemicals also in the food chain getting along and then coming back to us, to the animal kingdom, birds and human beings. And some of the birds are laying eggs even without the hard eggshell, which means that is going to become extinct. And the tourism, which is not very responsible tourism, polluting air and the noise emission, and then littering anywhere and everywhere. Even the crossing of aeroplanes, okay, cruise ships, cars and buses can annoy and then create stress even some of the marine mammals. These are, we have been very insensitive, and these are all contributing, and these are all looking very negative. But the Laudato Si is a call to be very optimistic, incorrigibly optimistic, so that we can restore our common home. That's why the Pope Francis is appealing to everyone, that every person living on this planet, okay, should have an inclusive dialogue about how we are going to shape the future of our planet. So these are some of things I thought that we could do, very especially those in the institutions and different NGOs and different organizations, both government and non-government organization, where the laws are going to be playing a very important role that needs to be very strict, and we need to create awareness. And then ocean friendly fishing, it is not a hunting place, rather it's a farming place. That attitude must change, and we need to adapt an area in a small little area wherever we are, that can also collaboration with the government and non-government organization. And conservation of the ocean is conservation of ourselves. This is what I am gradually putting in the funnel, where how we can do it in a systematically, okay, avoid the ocean dumping, limit the offshore oil and gas development, stop using dynamites for fishing, stop the overfishing also, reduce, reuse and recycle plastic, and we must stop, okay, and all this at the land level, is not extend to the ocean. Drive a more gas efficient vehicle, we know how this contributing to the green gas. Clean the stream and river, because it is all going and entering into the ocean, and before it enters we clean, and then ocean will be cleaner. Conserve the endangered species, okay, in the both land and more so in the ocean. Join environmental volunteering program and organization. Take action on recreational use of marine, simply for the recreation, so that the creational power of the ocean is restored. Avoid the endangered seafood just for the sake of taste, and then we can eliminate number of species from the ocean. Speak up about marine environmental issues. I think we have started. So three important points that we can, more than these activities, I think the attitude also must go along with the action. So everything is interconnected, we are interrelated and interdependent. If we think that we are autonomous, very independent, and this is an illusion, and that is what we are experiencing in all the flood and other things. Secondly, the model of development that we have right now is unsustainable. Very especially, it is damaging the ecosystem, and we cannot afford to maintain this kind of development. And Pope Francis is asking us to a renewed theory of development and social philosophy, where the nature and the intrinsically connected poor people, fishing community and the ocean, everything is taken into consideration in our planning and development. Thirdly, social and environmental problems are not two different issues, but one complex issue. And that is why this document comes as an ecological document. Not only that, not simply that, but an awakening of our social thinking. So the human roots for all these ecological crises, okay, comes at the epicenter of anthropocentrism, where self-centered person, I, me, myself, and so I can use and throw anything and everything into the nature, and that needs to be checked and then corrected, realigned ourselves. Forgetting our origin is another thing that we need to constantly remind ourselves, that the earth is our common home, and we are all dust came from the earth, and we need to go back. And as a sister with whom we share our life, we need to take care, a beautiful mother who opens her arms to embrace us. And we need to move from ego system to ecosystem. And the Jesuits, okay, all over the world have the GC36 eco-theological thinking, and we have started, and then we have moved rightly to the universal apostolic preferences. We have for a decade, we all over the world Jesuits have, and then to collaborate in the care of our common home is one of our top 4 priorities. Okay, and we want to work and collaborate with all possible, okay, organizations, small communities, so that the entire common home is restored. And these are my references. And I would like to end with, we can no longer remain silent before one of the greatest environmental crises in the world history, and ocean is one among them, and we need to protect and conserve so that we conserve ourselves for a better future. Thank you very much. You are most welcome to ask your question.
Thank you, Dr. Victor, for that very insightful session on the status of marine biodiversity, fisheries, and fishing communities. Especially you presented with a lot of statistics as to what is happening and how things are gradually changing, and also very clearly touching upon what are the core factors that are really affecting biodiversity, marine biodiversity especially, and how we can systematically approach this entire issue in caring for the oceans, and strongly touching upon with the vision and mission of the Laudato Si and our aim, UAPs, etc. Thank you very much for this session. Now I would like to open the floor for questions. I saw one in the chat box. I'll read it out for you. This is from Dr. Gerald Wilson. Is there any marine conservation program initiated by the Jesuit community?
I think at the conference level or at the local level, I'm not very sure to consolidate and give you. We just got the awareness, and I don't know to pinpoint that. Maybe Charles can add if you know.
Certainly, I would be an appropriate person to answer this
Yes.
question. There are small-scale initiative at the grassroots level. We have parishes across the coastal belt. Where you take the entire southern belt, even Gujarat. There are multiple levels of approaches and interventions with various stakeholders. One is with the community level, another is with the local government body structure, and even at the state level in Gujarat, there are collaboration partners that are engaged with them at the policy level, how to influence things so that ocean, kept safe. That is the initiative that is going on. In terms of reducing the pollution, in terms of creating awareness among the local groups, all of that is happening, but there are always certain things which are beyond our control. It needs a collective approach and also participation from other major stakeholders like industries. So that is taking time, but it's in progress. So, and we have some partners who are associated with Jesuits, but they're also into training marine officials and others in Bombay. So these are at grassroots level, at minor level, but it's gradually picking up. So it also depends on the challenge with the respective core work of the partners. And so say if there is somebody's working on the gender, their focus will be more towards that when they're working on the fisher community. But certainly work is going on at the grassroots level. I see. Yes,
along with that, the Jesuit Chennai province has started the ministry to the fishermen, and two Jesuits are there. We also started, and then networking with the other organizations.
I see one hand up. Oppo F17 Pro. Can I ask you to unmute and speak and ask your question?
Yes, Father Blaze.
In keeping with Pope Francis's call about our home, our creation as our home.
Yes, Father.
Do you think we need to think theologically a little in a different way, that creation is God's expression also of His presence among us? Until we learn to think of the environment as something sacred, we will only think that it is there for our use and for our consumption and for our exploitation. There is, if you're talking about a holistic relationship, then there is a holistic interrelationship between the human community, the environment, the earth itself, the oceans, water, air. I think these are all sacred elements which we need to look upon as something sacred and treat them as not just things for our consumption and for our use, but for living vital relationship with us.
Sure, Father. I go with you, Father. We need that.
Because only then we will say we have the earth is our mother, the earth is sacred, the earth is God's presence among us, the trees and forests are his own expression of himself for our life. We cannot live without any of these natural elements or parts of creation that are there with us.
Thank you, Father. I see another question in the chat box from Pramila. I will read it out. Given the change in the coastal regulation zone laws of India, which will have the direct impact of the construction on the natural coastline of India, what are the collaborative actions on this issue, which is under a national level?
I think Roxy can answer this.
Dr. Roxy, are you?
Well, actually, I do not have much information on the law part and all. Yeah.
Okay. Because I see so many ministries, so much like India has got, but networking and then coming together, only Roxy can say how much is the level of networking.
Actually, in terms of, for example, while building infrastructure and all on coast side, especially west coast of India and all, you see a lot of infrastructure being built in terms of coastal expressways and all. But there isn't much of, at least from a climate change perspective, climate change impact assessment and in-depth environment assessment before planning these huge infrastructures and development construction activities along the coast, which is much needed. But for doing that, we need a very micro level assessment across the coast on what environmental conditions they are, how this construction can affect them, and also how climate change might interact with these changes. For example, even if some states like for Maharashtra is coming up with a climate change assessment for both for the state and for climate change action plan for the state and for the city Mumbai also. But still, many of these action plans are in paper or just for highlights. I don't see much of an action-oriented work coming out there. And even if it is there, it is based on past climate. They are not, I mean, we are building a huge coastal infrastructure like expressway. It should stay for the next 50, 60 years. Yeah. Okay, the environmental impacts are another factor, but it should stay for the next 60 years. But if it is causing floods and if it is going to break down during cyclones and floods and all that, and because the future changes are much more aggravated than what we had in the past. And we have data, future projections from these IPCC reports and data to show how this might change along the coast in the future. Yeah. So we can actually develop the coastal regulations, coastal infrastructure working, all with respect to what is going to happen in the future, at least for the next few decades. We have that capability, but we are not doing that yet.
If I could just interrupt, I mean, that was my question, and I'm from Mumbai, so I know what you're saying when you say coastal road and this expressway, because so I'm part of Don Bosco Youth Movement and also the Friday for Future Mumbai, and this coastal road is a big issue for us. We are trying to sensitize people. We are talking to the Koli community, but how to deal with it. If somebody could reach out to us later, or we could help.
Right, Pramila. In fact, I was invited to one of their discussions, but at the end, I felt like they just wanted to show that they are doing something for climate change and environment. But
yeah, that's the problem. Yeah, we want to. That's what the action is like. What I like the thing of this, that to work with the coastal communities, we are talking to a lot of people, but then the action, there is a lot of fear because this project is under the current government, and people, like even to take the police permission to protest or to bring some sort of awareness of what is happening, people think that this road is important, but it's not, because they already have the metro project, so we don't need the road at all. And then the community itself, the Koli community itself, they feel that they are only asking for the bridge, like widening of the bridges, the gap under the pillars of the bridges, instead of saying we don't need the project completely.
Right.
So it's very complex, and if there's some, some
Yeah,
organization.
right. And there is just one quick point I want to tell. I told about future climate change. What about future population? Mumbai right now is a city with 20 million population in 2020. Yeah, by 2050, when we are hitting 1.52 degrees Celsius, Mumbai population is projected to almost double. That is 20 million on top of this 20 million, almost 40 million. Yeah, so sorry, we need to actually rethink, redesign our cities, coastal population, not only coastal, but also if you go to the hills, it's the same situation. So we need to work on all these aspects, actually.
Yes.
Thanks.
Just to add to that, I think the larger picture, if you look at it, all the countries are supposed to kind of report on their progress in terms of preserving the environment, that includes ocean also. But I think gradually it also involves a certain level of introspection at the policy level as to how effective are we going to be. What purpose is it? Kind of a more short term or long term? Certainly, governments are it's a kind of opportunity cost also they are looking at, but certainly any larger projects will have its own negative impacts in the long run, especially when we are talking about the ocean and maintaining the biodiversity, etc. There'll be a huge loss, which we may not at times know whether it is kind of we can get it back things. For already what we have done, how much of in the name of development, what has been done. And today we are reflecting on that. But when disaster strikes, I mean, whether will this infrastructure will be resilient, will it be useful? So there is a complete need for a complete mindset change. And one thing we are looking at always the larger players to play a role, but education should also kind of step in and educate people in today's context. How much of education today is educating people to be more environment friendly, and have we made any significant changes in our syllabus? What we are teaching, the leaders that we are creating, all of them are product of our education system. So that also calls for immediate change and crash courses.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I see that awareness is coming up. A lot of communities are working together. A lot of departments are working together for the better cause. I think so. What we generally say, we need collective action at all scales.
Yes, Father, please go ahead.
I like the mention of education, because right from childhood, we ought to be able to teach our children how to look at the environment and what is the relationship of the environment with our own life systems. They are interdependent, and this is what needs to go across through the whole process of education.
Thank you. Are there any more questions?
Charles, can I?
Yes, Father, please.
Yeah. The programs, campaigning, and symposiums and all are going on. I think things are in place. But what is important to understand is economy is not consistent or not in harmony with ecology. And many countries are coming together and discussing this very seriously, but they're actually not sincere, because they discuss one thing about environmental protection and preservation and all that. And these are the guys who go and break the laws. Like, for example, in Goa, we had CRZ violations, which are happening galore. And now they are diluting the law also. And what is happening is the common pool resources where the people of the villages were the owners rightfully. Now they have lost control over it, and new buildings, hotels, everything in the name of tourism are coming up. As Roxy has presented one of those slides there, where you see in the slum, through the slum, that river Miti is going through, which is now reduced to a drain, and that has its impact because the buildings have come up. Same things are happening in Goa. CRZ violations. I'm more concerned about even the violations which are happening in the river. Like, for example, we have a Mandavi river here and we have 6 casinos. Now you have problems with buildings coming up close to the coastal line and you have CRZ violation, CRZ regulations. But what about the buildings? These are buildings, casinos are buildings, and they are in the water itself. It is harming the marine life. It is affecting everything. Just to show to the people, they are showing some garbage going out, but most of the garbage go into the river. And what is happening to the marine life? So actually what is happening is at our NGO level, at our level, we are building alliances, we are networking, we are doing very good work. But that is not going to help because these guys who are at the helm of affairs are not sincere. And that is what is causing problems. So it is a very complex thing, but the leaders are not serious and sincere about it. So what we need to do at that level, I think we need to think collectively and come together, build alliances, network, and fight against our governments. I think that is the only solution I feel.
Thank you, Father Simon. If there are no other questions, I would like to move to our, we've almost come to the end of the webinar. If there are any questions, we can take one more question. If there are any persistent question, if anyone wants to ask, otherwise we'll close the session. Okay, I assume there are no questions. Thank you, sorry, one question. From Punita, there is.
I have responded to that. So,
yeah.
Yeah. So if you want to take up, so Punita's question was, is it fair enough to entirely make communities responsible to take all the action to prevent climate impacts? So it's, I think it comes from the earlier discussion as well. So many times you see, vulnerable communities endangered by climate impacts, which, I mean, they are not responsible for the emissions. So, what are we looking at? So what I see is this way. It's a global responsibility, particularly of the major emitters. But the commitments that they have made are insufficient to keep the dangers from climate change reduced, in the foreseeable future. And nations have not come together. So at the same time, while we are pushing for global emissions to come down, we need to urgently, if we need to survive, these communities to survive, they need to urgently work on some kind of local adaptation, or otherwise their survival will not work out. And some cases, they are beyond their capacities to adapt. So in those cases, other philanthropical institutions or faith-based organizations or local governments and administration can help these communities to help them to adapt. So beyond that, otherwise we won't see these communities, many of these communities surviving in a improved condition. That's a short response.
Thank you, Dr. Rakshi. I would like to look at the question in a slightly different perspective and would like to add. It's one thing, in a democratic setup, leave it out the other model of kind of administrative setup in the countries, but in a democratic setup, people are also equally responsible for it. So they also have the right to elect the right people who are kind of forward thinking, who are kind of well aware, and who can bring about strategic changes in the way that we live, the way we pursue the development, the perspective to a development can be changed. So people certainly has a role, and people are the power. It's ultimately in a democratic set of people. It's for the people, by the people, and of the people. So to an extent, people can bring about a change. So that way can also be the thing can be looked at. So this is a kind of slightly to give a different perspective.
Yeah, I think it also depends on which kind of community we are talking about. If it is vulnerable, like domestic migrants, yeah, who may not have any voice in a society like Mumbai is perfect example again. Lot of migrant workers who do not have any role in probably elections or local panchayats or anything. Yeah, but at the same time they are helpless in the face of this. So, but coaly fishermen and all. So probably we might need to help each other in terms of adaptation.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Roxy. And I think we have come to the end of this webinar. I'm sure the sessions, the various sessions, the topics that is covered, that are covered today are of help to you. And I'm sure that will also further strengthen your existing work, or might have kind of challenged you to start a new work in your stream of work, whatever you are engaged in. So without delaying further, I would like to call Suman to propose the vote of thanks.
Thank you so much, sir. And on behalf of Jesuit Conference of India and South Asia and Conference Development Office, SJS, Social Justice and Ecology Secretariat, South Asia, I would like to extend a heartfelt thanks to all our resource persons for providing us with insights on topics today. I would like to thank Dr. Roxy for taking his time out from his busy schedule and for providing us insight on the impacts of climate change on Indian oceans. Thanks, Ms. Cheryl Dugan, for joining us from Philippines and shared about the Laudato Si movement and its engagement in the regions. Thank you so much, ma'am. I would also like to thank Dr. Victor Roche for this input session on current status on marine biodiversity, fisheries, and fishing communities in India. So thank you so much, Father Victor. I must mention my deep sense of appreciation to all the webinar participants from all the provinces, province development directors, superiors, priests, sisters, then assistant directors of partner organization, principals of network institutions, secretaries, managers, coordinators of various societies, networks, and collaboratives, etc. And importantly, our participants and partners from abroad who are present here for the webinar. Just to mention their names, Ms. Amy is here, who is the International Coordinator for Justice, Peace, and Integrity of Creation. She is the Coordinator of Ecology Task Force also, and also the Vatican COVID-19 Commission. And also we have Ms. Grizel from Eco-Jesuit Network. So thank you so much for joining us. I'm also grateful to our team members at the CDO for all the preparatory work that they have done, coordination, and for making the online event happen. Thank you all once again, and wish you all a happy weekend. Thank you.
Thanks.
And see you later. Have a good Friday.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Cham.
Thank you very much.
Everybody. Yes.
Thank you, everyone. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Father Charles.
Thank you, Father. Thank you for joining us today. It's good to see you.
Thank you.